sure we're live on Facebook. There seems to be a slight delay.
Yep, I see this.
Yeah, because I don't. Right, there we are. Hey everybody, welcome to another installment of Paranormal Q&A with Jack and Carly. Carly's once again, she's got all the pretty lights and everything else going on behind her, and I just have a door behind me and a wall.
I got awesome special effects.
She has special effects. I got nothing. That's what I got. I got nothing. So good to have you all back again. It's been a week since our last show. We had a good last show. We're going to have a great show tonight with our special guest, Ed Brodrick. So, Carly, why don't you... first of all, did you have anything going on this week? Was anything special happen this week?
I don't know. Caught up on a bunch of anime. Read a bunch of manga.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Oh,
that was my week.
You got your unemployment finally, too. Right?
Yes, and my unemployment. And I have a date to continue work again. So, yes.
Very good.
It's been a great week. So
yeah, I've just been working. That's all. Just still working. We had a nice long weekend, so the Memorial weekend. Hopefully, everybody had a good time. Enjoyed yourselves out there. Got a little sunshine. It was a nice weekend. We all enjoyed it. So we got out for a little bit and got some stuff done around the house. And
we did.
Hopefully, everybody stayed safe though, and you did your social distancing, even if you were out and about. So, but with that said, like I said, we do have a special guest tonight, our good friend Ed Brodrick. And Carly, why don't you read his bio for us?
Absolutely. So Reverend Ed Brodrick has had apparently I can't read today, has had a full life from sailing around the world to serving in 3 branches of the military and hiking the mountains of Kodiak, Alaska. Lately, Ed's journey has led him to his greatest adventure yet, discovering the kingdom of God within. Walking a bike path, Ed met Jesus. Surprisingly, this encounter opened doors to the paranormal. This encounter enabled him to be able to see into people's soul and provide counsel with supernatural accuracy. Doors opened for the Reverend to work alongside of known paranormal figures and teams. He is now known as a prophetic exorcist. His congregation consists mainly of families who have been freed from demonic oppression and possession.
Awesome. And with that said, we'll say a couple quick things here tonight. Welcome to Michelle Millens, Bob Burnell, all of our friends online. Delina, Michelle Millens, Dwayne, Michelle's there again, Rodney, Erica, and all our friends out there tonight. We'd like to introduce you to our good friend, Ed. And here is Ed. We're going to bring Ed on. He's going to be up in, let's say, 3, 2, 1, and here's Ed. How you doing, Ed?
Did you mute him?
Oh, Jeff? I muted him. Sorry, Ed. I muted you. I did this last time, too. You weren't the first one I did that to. At least I caught yours quick.
Thank you.
Carly caught it. Anyway, I do that all the time. I mess up all the time. Sorry about that. But yeah, anyway, here's Ed. Ed, glad to have you on finally.
Jack and Carly, my gosh, the many times I have stayed up and listened to you guys and all the wonderful figures you've had on, the guests and everything like that. So let me just say right up in the front, thank you very much. This is quite an honor to actually sit in the chair here and talk to the great Jack Kenna and the Carly. So
thank you.
The great
Carly. Oh yeah, with
infamous,
the
great Carly and the infamous Jack Kenna. Yeah,
the infamous Jack. Yes. I can see that. I can hear that.
The infamous jerk Kenna. That'd be my buddy Dustin Perry. Jerk calls me jerk. So
the quick side note, Jack, I gotta tell you, there was a young childhood friend of mine. His name is Dave. Mm-hmm. If he's watching, he's going to see his double because you are the spitting image of this gentleman. When I first met you, I was like, what? Since when is Dave involved in the paranormal? I was blown away. So I guess apparently you do have a doppelganger out there.
We all have doubles out there somewhere. Right? There's another guy who used to live here in Rensselaer, looked just like me too. My sister, he owned a bar though, and my sister went to the bar one night and she saw the guy sitting there and she asked him, talking to me, she goes, what are you doing in the bar here? He goes, I own this. And she suddenly realized it wasn't me. So He's also taller than me. He's like 6'2" or something like that. So,
Oh wow.
yeah, he was a lot taller. But he was sitting down at the time, so she couldn't tell. But I did see him once in a market, local market. So I ran into myself. Yeah, it's interesting. We all have a double out there somewhere. I guess
ran
I have more
into
than
mine.
one. I guess I have more than one.
Yeah. I ran into mine at DMV.
Oh, did you?
She was right next to me, and they were like, "Carly," I'm like already being helped. I'm like, "Oh no, I'm already being helped." And the girl looked just like me. We were the same height, and she was getting her picture taken for her driver's license right next to me. And I was like, "That's insane."
I have yet to meet mine, and I guess that would be a good thing because I think one of me is enough. Just saying.
Yeah, well, hey, yeah, you could be very unique in the world out there, Ed. Maybe only one of you. That's it. That's it. So Carly read your bio and stuff, and I knew some things about you, but I don't think I ever. I don't know if you remember ever told me about when you were on your was it bike path there. You met Jesus. I didn't.
Yes.
I'd love to hear about that. No, because I seriously would love to hear about that. Because we've all had experiences and we've all had like visitations and things like that. But what was this? How did this exactly happen? I'd love to hear about this.
Well, it was. It was a surprise for me too because
Sure, it was. Yeah,
it wasn't
would
like
be
I
for
was
me
going,
too.
hey, right? No.
Yeah.
In fact, what had happened was I had picked up some books from a local store. I love reading, and so I picked up some book from the local store, and I missed the bus. Now this was like a town over from where I lived, and so I'm like, oh, so I got to walk home on the bike path. So that's what I did. Started walking home on the bike path, and I'm just flipping through some of these books. One was about the apocalypse, and so that kind of thing interested me. And another one was on the paranormal and the seedier side, like the paranormal bullying and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I was dipping in that. But then there was this one book, and I must have been prophetic because it was in the shape of a passport. And so I was reading that. And there were certain prophecies that I had noticed that were in it that just kind of hit me. And then the next thing you know, in the past, as I said in the bio, in the past, I had been very sensitive to the spiritual world. So I could recognize when I was not alone. But this time, this was entirely different because there he was. And it was... I didn't see him with my eyes, but how do you
kind of see it with your third eye, right?
Exactly. It was like
I've seen other things that I can see that look like they're there.
It was a crazy day, but yet it was cloudy around me.
Right.
And then there he was, and it was like that was when actually I had received my call. It was like you're on. I was on the path. I was on the self-destructive path, and just as much as adventure as I was in, the reason why I was on this adventure is because I'm sure your listeners can relate to this. There was a cavernous hole that I was trying to fill, and I was trying to figure out what it was. And so it was almost like, I think everybody comes to the point in life where they have to choose life and death in their life. It's just like, okay, now is your moment of decision, the valley of decision, as they say. There it was, and there it was for me. And I said, yes, sir. And I felt something fall from my eyes. It was like I didn't realize, it's like when you have contacts and they fall out. You just kind of have that thing. And everything became bright. It went from this hazy, kind of cloudy to like everything was lit. The trees, I was walking through a patch where there were trees. Everything was just lit up. And at that moment, I felt as if I was no longer just myself, but the curtain or the veil that separated me from the Spirit of God just was torn.
Right.
And now I was like a light bulb that had been turned on.
Right.
And so now here I'm glowing, and I had no idea. You would think, oh, with this revelation of me encountering the living God, you would think that I would also understand everything completely, and I didn't. I was just like, what? And I'm just, the walk home, I don't even remember because I was just totally blown away.
Right.
And then shortly after that is when the paranormal stuff started happening, and I, growing up religious,
Right.
I was like, well, not super religious, but I
I know. I was grew up the same way. I was,
I went to the Methodist church all my life,
okay.
and that particular church, the only thing they could cure was insomnia. But still, nonetheless, I went. You know, but that's about the extent.
All
But
right. That's
then
well.
that
Yeah. Well,
encounter, yeah, it changed everything.
yeah, yeah. How old were you when that happened?
I was
Or roughly. It
20,
doesn't have to be exactly.
it was in '88, so it was 20.
All right. Okay. So basically, you met Christ, and He made the blind man see.
Yes, very good. Yes, sir. It was like
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's different meanings to that, and literally being blind and being, and He made people see who were literally blind, but they also spiritually blind.
right.
So He cleared your vision for you.
My certain. Oh yes, he certainly did.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was
So
definitely interesting after that. Yes.
yeah, and that's kind of how you got into the paranormal then too. Was what at that kind of moment? I mean, it was several things happened, but was that kind of when you really started to get into it after that, or was it later? That
Yes.
because
Well,
there was a question from one of our people that asked that question.
okay.
What led you to get into the paranormal?
As a kid, I used to watch that. And I'm going to date myself, but I used to watch the show that was hosted by Leonard Nimoy. In
Didn't we
search of,
both? Didn't we both?
if you understand what I'm saying. And so, and all that paranormal stuff, that was the extent of paranormal TV at the time. So, but I loved that stuff. So I was into it. And there were things that, there were games I used to play with my cousin's friends where I would guess what their houses looked like and what their rooms looked like and what was in it.
Okay.
And they would be blown away and I just thought it was lucky guessing. But
Yeah, yeah.
but,
You would, right? As a kid, you think, oh, it's probably just lucky guess.
but after that encounter, things changed. I
Right.
was at a gathering, and and it was like a little teaching by this minister who came, and he also was very much into the supernatural, and so he was doing a lot of healings and stuff, and so he was teaching how he did that, and then we were singing a song. Now a person 2 chairs down from me started shaking and kind of having a little seizure, but I felt this odd chill down the back of my neck, the hair standing up, and this weird smell that, as you can understand this, that wasn't a physical one, but a spiritual one. I was like, "What
Right.
is that?" But I knew somehow. I knew, and
Right.
so the minister later on figured out what was going on. I'm just sitting there minding my own business because the first thing I thought in my mind was, "I'm going to sit right here and I'm not going to do a thing. I want nothing to do with that." So they took the lady, took her out back. The minister's wife, as she was passing by, I said, "I know what's going on. I'll pray for it here." And so he went back. Next thing you know, I mean, maybe a minute or 5 minutes later, I get a tap on my shoulder, and
Yeah.
it's the minister's wife, and they're like, "Brother Ed, I wasn't ordained or anything. Could you help us?"
Brother, yeah, there you go.
I
Yeah.
was like, "No," but out of my mouth came yes, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" So when I'm going back there, this woman, this little petite woman, is literally throwing these people off of them, and cussing, swearing, and all kind of looking really crazy at me. Now I don't know anything from anything. I've
Right.
only seen this stuff on TV. I'm looking at this thing. It's looking at me, and I was just like, okay. And then this thought came,
Yeah.
start reading some of the scripture. So I read, the one that said that the devil would be thrown into the lake of fire, which he didn't. I guess that didn't appreciate that.
I'm
And then,
sure not. Yeah.
and then this revelation started coming that this woman was broken,
Okay.
and that she had been abused when she was younger, and that these demons had attached themselves to her because of those incidents. And
Yeah.
so then that led her down a darker path, and then that is why she was there. So as I am praying for her and these things are happening, then I remembered um, that I could just tell them to leave. So I started doing that,
Right.
and I didn't expect anything to really happen. Again, a huge fit, and then she started vomiting this foam.
Right.
There were three of them, three spirits that were in her, and after that, she was fine. I was frazzled. I mean, I am shaking. I'm sitting down. I am thinking, what just happened?
Yeah.
I just went there because I had nothing else to do, and I figured I'd listen to what this guy had to say. And then next thing
Yeah.
you know, there's a mini apocalypse happen in the guy's back porch. And I'm
Yeah.
sitting there, and then I looked up, and he had wallpaper, and it had grapes on it, and it said, um, "You shall bear much fruit. I am the true vine." And it
Mm,
just hit me between the eyes, and like,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So that was pretty much the beginning of how things started after that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that you eventually, obviously, you went and you became you went for your training and stuff like
I
that.
did.
Yeah. Yeah.
I ran away from it for 2 years because that was something I did not want to do. I know I sound
Yeah.
like Jonah, but it's true. I was
No,
just
no, it's true. I did the same thing. I mean, I was much longer than that, but I mean, I had my experience, which was on the show there, um, Paranormal Nightmare or whatever.
right, right. I was
And I just after that, I got out of everything. I didn't get back into it until I had really buried that so deep, I totally forgot about it. And then when Ghost Hunters came out, I just, oh yeah, I remember, getting into that stuff at one time. I didn't remember what had happened.
right.
Otherwise, I might have stayed out of it. But I always knew this. When I started to get back into the paranormal, I always had like a real fear of Ouija boards.
Mm,
Like I didn't want to. A matter of fact, there was one event we were at, and uh, who later became good friends of mine. They were doing a Ouija board session, but they do a lot of. They do prayer before. They ask for a specific spirit that's was in the place. A woman who had lived there and died there, who they believed was there. So, anyways, they kind of it's like anything else. You got to know what you're doing to protect people and yourselves from anything negative coming through. Because one of them is a demonologist as well. It's Katie and Becca Boyd, and they're really good people. And they ended up being the ones to teach me a lot. But the night of the thing, they could tell like I was getting kind of freaked out, and they're like, they pulled me aside. Are you okay? I said, I really don't like these things. I really, I can't tell you why, but I don't really want it. So they sat down, they talked to me. I said, look, here's how we know the problems that can be caused by them. Here's how it's really done. Why don't you just sit and watch what we do. You don't have to sit at the table, but just sit to the side and watch what we do and how we do it. And I did, and I ended up joining in a little bit later and had a more positive experience with it. But it wasn't until that point, I was totally like, and I still don't like them. And I won't use them. But she did teach me how to close them, how to cleanse them, close them, and keep them forever being used again if that's what you want. So I did learn that from her, or from the both of them. But yeah, so I got totally away from it for I don't know how many years. I was 17 at the time. Didn't get back into it until I was in my when Ghost Hunters come out. So I was in my like mid 30s. But that whole time, my life was, I mean, I had an okay life, don't get me wrong, but it was always like 2 steps forward, 3 steps back.
exactly.
Until I reconnected, and it was Becca Boyd who taught me how to connect and embrace my own abilities. And then everything just went boom, flooded forward. And she taught me how to do that. So that made a big difference in my life after that. And then everything got smoother, everything went easier. That's when positive things started happening in my life very quickly. Once I said, "Okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing," it was kind of like you, right? I mean,
Well, yeah.
we don't want to do things, but we're supposed to because that's what God has planned for us.
What really, yeah, what really changed things for me was when I was in the Coast Guard and we were doing patrols up in Alaska.
Okay,
And so here I am, I'm in the Bering Sea, and the show, Deadliest Catch.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
where we were. In fact, we went to Dutch Harbor and all that. So
Oh, did you?
I experienced what it was like to look at 40-foot seas. You know, I live, I live in Rhode Island, and you know what I'm saying.
You don't see 40-foot seas too
Yeah.
often down in Rhode Island.
It's a rough sea if the waves reach 2 feet. Now here we are. It's like these waves are ripping stanchions off the deck, and I'm just like totally blown away, excited because I like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But and here I am. I'm on the deck of the ship, and I'm watching all this, and I was reminded of the story of Jonah. When God called Jonah, and he's like, nope. So he gets swallowed by a giant fish, and I'm thinking this would be the opportune time for God. So I'm
the
like, you
whale
know
to come
what?
up and
Okay,
swallow you.
maybe
Yeah,
maybe I'll rethink this thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, but I would cry out and like, God, show me what it is you want me to do. What do you
Yeah,
call me to do? And then during the daytime, people would start talking to me about problems they had at home and how they felt like the house was haunted, and
right.
I would have answers for them. And then next thing you know, they're having their own experiences with God, and it's just like, hello, you're asking, it's
Yeah,
happening, put it together, and finally, after a little while,
yeah,
felt like
but
God was going, wake up. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Exactly. That is how it happens, right? It is like,
yeah, yeah,
boom, hey, I'm showing you, you know. And I've told people have asked me, well, how do you know if you're on the right path? And I said, because if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, what he wants you to do, things will get easier. And they won't get easy right away, but things will get easier. Your life will get better. And as long as you stay on that path, you're going to suddenly realize, okay, this is the path I'm supposed to be on. When you start to stray from that path, you'll see, like, no, you're going the wrong way, back this way, back this way. It'll kind of direct you itself because you'll notice little things will happen that'll tell you, no, not that way, this way.
yeah.
You know, and that's what I've noticed, at least anyway, for my own part. Like if I start to kind of stray from the direction I'm supposed to be going, I'll just notice little things. There'll be little hints, um, whether it's, I don't know, something as simple as something just doesn't feel right to you, or or you're not supposed to be going to this place today, so all of a sudden everything is like holding you back,
Right.
like the car won't start for some reason, or oh, you can't ever get out of the driveway for whatever reason. It's like, okay, all right, I got it, I get the hint,
And you
slow
know
down,
what? The
rethink what you're going to do today.
right. And you would think that dealing with helping people getting set free from spiritual oppression would
Right.
be the major thing that made me resistant. But after my encounter
Yeah.
and my, I guess you could say, my Pauline encounter, when St. Paul was knocked off its high horse.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
okay. So the thing that really made me run was the fact that I started knowing things
Okay.
about people.
Yeah.
The first time it ever happened was when I was at a retreat. Oh, and
Yeah.
actually, I was not at a retreat. The retreat had ended that day,
Okay.
and everybody had left. But when people gather together and they are of one mind, and they are believing, and they're expecting, and I always tell my people, with great expectation comes great manifestation, and that's a spiritual
Right.
law.
Right.
And
Right.
if you're doing this with God, it's He created it, so don't be surprised if things manifest. So,
Right.
well, apparently this was the case with this retreat because the energy, what we call the anointing, the power was still there in the building, and I was just picking up waves of it, and it was just like wow. And of course, I had recognized it. I'm like, whew, this must have been powerful. So now I'm with my friend, and we were there because we were going to pick up another friend and go out to the movies. And
Okay.
I was talking to this young lady, and I was asking how the retreat was. And all of a sudden, I get this flash. In this flash, I see a clock, and I see that it's 3 a.m. I see that the window was open. I even saw where she was sitting. Now, all this is like in my inner mind, so I could
Right.
easily dismiss it as, all my imagination. But
Right.
when I started telling her, uh, were you awake at 3 o'clock in the morning last night? She goes, oh, yeah, yeah, I was. I said, and you were praying, and you prayed this. And then once that flow hits, it's kind of hard to stop. And I'm
I
like,
know.
you prayed
I
this,
know.
Yeah.
this, and this. And then I said this. I said, but this is what God says. And then it was a scripture that came. And I gave her that. And she was crying. And
Yeah.
it was really bringing a healing because it was something that was very deep and personal to her. And
Right.
that was the very beginning of what I do now.
Right.
But, don't despise the days of small beginnings because that's how everything begins is in the
That's
seed and then it grows. But so
that's
with
right.
this lady, so what did I do? Did I go, oh my gosh, this is awesome. Thank you, Lord. I have a new mutant power. No, no,
Yeah.
instead,
No, it's the opposite. Yeah. It's
I
like,
ran. And it was a no, no, no. And this is why, because I did not want to, I was afraid
mhm,
that perhaps something from my dark past had clung on to me. and I was now, leeching off of dark forces somehow ignorantly. I
Right.
did not realize, because most people growing up in traditional Christianity don't realize that there is supernatural impartation and supernatural power
Right.
that manifests in a person's life when they really have a relationship with
Right.
God. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that healing existed, or that a person could walk around knowing things about people, and all to help them in their journey, towards God and Jesus. I didn't know that. So
Right.
here I am. I'm thinking, oh no, I'm turning back into a fortune teller, and
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
ran from that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah. Well, yeah, because you didn't understand it yet. You didn't
right,
understand where that gift was coming from. Is
exactly,
it coming from the positive or is it coming from the negative?
exactly.
Because like you said, it can come from the other side too. You
Yep,
know, but it's just I think that just depends on how you're living your life and what you're focused on, the type of person you are, and whether you have anything really negative still hanging onto you, hanging around you. Um,
right.
and I still think you can. There's ways to tell. I think. Well, now that we know, I mean, we've been doing this for a long time now, so we kind of can recognize one from another because there's certain things that go hand in hand with the negative side of things,
Absolutely.
and the person's attitude tends to be different too. Very very like if it's negative, what I usually notice with people is they're very all about themselves realistically. They'll give people information and stuff like that, but it's all about how they are doing it and how it's their it's their ability, and they're not giving it's not coming from God. You know what I'm
That's
saying?
right. And that's why it
And,
always will be stunted, because if you think it's coming from you, then
yeah,
you have to maintain it, and you have to make sure it's headed in the right direction. But
right,
when you realize that the source is not you, and you are just the speaker that's attached to the stereo,
right,
then
right,
you can just rest and relax and judge the fruit of it. So
right,
if
right,
it
right.
brings education, if it brings comfort, and if it encourages you on your walk, then you know that
Yeah.
this is something that's good. So
Yeah, and you're making a positive difference in other people's lives too. I mean, and you can see that, how it affects them after. And yeah, that's how I think you're doing the good work. And you're not looking for it to happen either. I mean, for me, when I'm just talking to somebody, sometimes a message will come through.
yep.
And for me, the first word that always comes through, it took me a while to figure this out, but the first word that comes through is Michael.
Hmm.
And then I get this image of a big black motorcycle with a lot of chrome on it.
Because you like that.
No, I'm not a big motorcycle fan
Oh my
personally, to be
gosh! I
honest
thought
with
maybe
you.
you
Honestly,
could
I
relate
am.
No,
to.
no.
Oh well,
She
maybe.
is. She
Okay,
is.
so
Yeah.
it's
I'm
all
not.
Carla's
But
fault,
this happened long before I met her. But it
right?
was somebody else who told me. I think it was somebody I met at Ocean State Paracon.
And that's
Uh,
how we met.
yeah, that's right. That's where we met. But somebody
Yep.
else there told me she's big into like the angelology and all that stuff. She goes, well, that's the more modern day vision of Saint Michael,
Hmm.
Archangel, the big tough guy, the one that tosses out the demons and all that stuff. I said, so you're telling me the name I'm getting and what I'm getting is the information is coming from him? I like whatever. Okay, I'm just gonna go with whatever.
Go with the flow,
But
right? Yeah.
yeah, but then all the information would come, and I'd be able to tell people like, well, this is what this person looked like. Is this, and this is the message they have for you, and all that stuff just comes through, and it makes a positive difference in their life. And again, I'm not doing it to give readings. I can be just talking to somebody, and it's like it keeps repeating in my head until I have to
That's usually
stop.
how it happens. Yeah.
Yeah, and it gets louder and louder. And it's like you need to tell them, okay, I get it. I got to tell them. Okay, so I got to stop them from talking, and then just give them the information.
There is a proverb that says, Solomon said this. He said, "A man's gift makes room for him and brings him before important people." Now, the practical of that is, if you're a wealthy king, you just present your treasure, and then, who's going to notice.
Yeah,
But the spiritual application of that is if you possess a supernatural gift, and you're walking in what God has called you to do, that
right,
will literally open doors, and you will find yourself walking with people who are known, and that's how it happened. That's how it happened with me. That's how I met you. Was just going to the Paracon.
Yeah, yeah.
I was the only guy dressed as a collar, and dressed in my
I
collar.
know. Yeah, I
And people
remember.
are like, "Who is this crazy loon?" Yeah, there's everybody there. There's every spectrum of the
Yeah,
paranormal, from
I
the
know there
dark
is.
to
Yeah,
the light, was all in there, and
yeah,
every single one of them was looking at me like, "What?" But it wasn't until I would go to certain ones, and then I would say, "Hey, can I pray a blessing for you?" Yeah,
yeah.
very rarely will anybody ever say no to that. And then when I did, then this information would come, and then I would start sharing that. And
Yeah.
that's pretty much how I wound up meeting with you. We
That's
chatted
right.
a few
That's right.
times, and
Yeah,
then through you, I met Carly. So
yeah, yeah. Well,
amazing, amazing how
At
that
Ocean State
it's
Park. Yeah.
interesting. Ocean State. Yeah, that's where I met Carly. Was at Ocean State.
Hmm.
I mean
And that's where I met
that
Jack.
little
Was the previous year.
and that's why I've always. I mean, Ken DeCosta, who runs that,
is a good man.
he is a great man, and he does it for the right reasons. And I
Yeah,
think that draws a lot of those type of people to that event because of that.
yeah.
And I think it's become a way where we meet a lot of people who end up being important in our lives at that event. I don't think he realizes how many of us have kind of all met each other there and become very important in each other's lives there. And I think that's an aspect of his event that he holds that he's never really realized.
And that's part of his gift.
Yeah, it
The
is bringing
ability to
those
put
people
that
together.
together. And when he did that, what happened? It put him into position of influence by knowing other people who were influences too. So,
Yeah.
like, I met you, I met Keith and Carl Johnson
Mhm.
at the paranormal convention over in Fairhaven,
Yep.
and so we were fast friends after that. So, and then I met the parent family. So it's just one thing after another,
It is. Yeah.
and then I'm amazed, frankly, because I'm just a kid who grew up in Bristol, and after that supernatural encounter where everything was just unfolding for me, I
Yeah.
just find myself in the most amazing places, having the most amazing experiences. And as I have, told my family, I feel like a man who's lived a life of 100-year-old man.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
certainly not that age, but just life and overflowing. Does that mean that I'm not going to have problems and trials? No, I
We
will,
all
of course,
do. We all do.
but I will have that supernatural experience
That's right.
and experiences that will bear me through. Oh, and just one quick thing:
Yeah.
anybody who has a question about anything in my life, feel free to ask while I'm on, because I'll gladly answer it for you.
And I was gonna bring all that up. I'm glad you said it. So because I know we got a few
Maybe I
people,
say,
we
huh?
got people watching out there. So if you do have a question for Ed tonight, anything paranormal related,
Absolutely.
well, this is all. This show is all about paranormal Q&A, and the people who watch the show are really the real guests of the show, because it's all about them and answering their questions for them and trying to help them out with different things. So. That's what this show is about, and that's why we like having people on like yourselves and other people, because you have different views on the paranormal too that can give answers to people who are out there. That man, we don't have none of us has all the answers, so it's different perspectives, different views, different theories, different experiences, and we love sharing those experiences, and that's why we loved having you on. You're sharing your experiences, which people wouldn't know otherwise, and
Right.
some of them may have had similar experiences. We don't know. But if they'd like to share something, or if they have any questions for you, please, people, ask. I know we've had a lot of people saying hi to us all night. So, Millie Weaver, hello out there, and Nick, hello to you.
Hey, Rodney's on.
Oh,
Rodney
is
Hey,
he?
says hi.
hey,
Rodney?
Rodney. Hi, Regina.
Oh, yeah, there's
Hi,
Rodney.
hi,
So if you
Jenny.
guys, yeah, Jenny, yeah, Jenny was the one who had the question about how did you get into the paranormal and stuff.
That was
So,
a very good question,
yeah,
Jenny.
yeah, it was.
Love that kid.
She is awesome. She is awesome. And just trying to see. I haven't seen any real questions. So we got some questions out there. Ask away. Um, Regina Bova did say it was. I'm just going to show that. Said it was a beautiful experience, Reverend Ed, and that was regards to your meeting Jesus. That's what that was regards to, which I still think is an amazing thing, because you just don't know when things like that are going to happen. It's meant to happen They're telling you which direction to follow, and they come to you and they let you know. You know, um, sometimes I think we're not always ready to hear that message. You know,
It's true.
like I wasn't. What the message I had from what I believe was an angel that night the demonic came was
Hmm.
that, yeah, everything's going to be okay. You have things to do. Now,
Right.
he never, in the show, they had him yelling at the demon to go away. That never happened.
Right.
All I ever heard was, "So everything's going to be okay. You have things to do." Then I heard the demon scream like an ungodly, and then it was
Hmm.
just gone. Then it was just gone. Um,
You know.
and
Okay.
I know whatever that was drove it out.
Right.
But I'm like, I got nothing to do. I got to go to school. That's what I got to do. I got to go to school. I got to go do,
Right.
and that's what I. But I think maybe that's what I was supposed to do initially, was do that, focus on that, because everything I've done over all those years um, led me to the paranormal. Realistically, I think about it. Even the hunting, fishing, you're doing investigations. You have to have a lot of patience. Well, hunting and fishing teaches you a lot of patience. Let me tell you. Um,
Exactly.
and it also teaches you, especially hunting, teaches you to listen to the world around you. All right, it's not just about sitting there and shooting something. Sometimes I never even I'd see deer and I wouldn't even shoot them. I just watch them. It's observance. It's listening to when you can't see something, you can hear it. You know, um, you sense a smell. Sometimes you smell things before you even see them, but it heightens all those senses. So I think and you connect on a spiritual level, believe it or not, to
But
the
even
world
exactly, but even when you're hunting, I know of a man of God that when he goes out to hunt,
around. Mhm.
uh, he just connects with everything.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
To
so
be a good hunter, that's what you have to do.
yeah, and I'll give you an example. One time, I went to go fishing with another minister friend of mine, and he had just gotten ordained the same time as me. And so he was more of a junior minister than I. So we were like, hey, let's go fishing. So we went to the spot that we knew we would catch baby bluefish and, skipjacks. So
Okay. Yeah.
we
Yeah.
got our lines ready and everything. And he's Portuguese. So, I believe the Portuguese have a genetic ability to catch fish,
I agree with that.
even in the desert. Okay. But me,
Yeah.
I have to cheat. And I'll show you what I mean by that.
Right.
So we're fishing for a whole hour, nothing. And finally, I turned to my friend and I said, Tony, why don't we just say a blessing? Now, when I say blessing, I'm not talking about the religious tradition that we see, waving of the hand and nothing happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Blessing means that you're releasing a supernatural power that literally causes the thing that you are desiring to come to pass. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I what did, and this is again another spiritual principle. We came into agreement, and we pronounced the blessing. Within minutes, about maybe 2 football fields away, there's we could see splashing by this buoy, this what they call a red nun, and it was splashing. We're like, what in the world is that? And then they start getting closer and closer. Now we were on a floating dock
Okay. Yeah. I
because
know what
I
those
like
are.
to get close to the action. You know what I mean? And
Yep.
and the rock of it reminded me when I was back in the Coast Guard. So what? Anyway, so I know, silly, right? But whatever. So
Yeah.
so all of a sudden, and I promise you, this school of fish, not skipjacks, but the actual bluefish, swim
Mm.
in front of the floating dock, and we were just putting in the hook and pulling them out. We caught
Wow.
so many we actually had to stop. And when we were done, they swam away,
Wow.
and they were the most delicious. So it was
Yeah.
just amazing that, and that's something that can be repeated. It's not something that's random.
Right. Right.
I grew up with a Russian roulette type relationship with God where I would pray and I would hope that maybe I would get an answer to prayer. And
Yeah.
so it was like Russian roulette, spin the wheel. Okay, look, I got my answer to prayer. Spin the wheel again, nothing. That's not
Right.
how it operates. And so I discovered that there were certain principles and laws, just like the law of gravity and the law of lift. The law
Hmm.
of lift supersedes the law of gravity, and that's why a ridiculously heavy machine can fly in the air. And so, when I discovered that, and I had a mentor that helped me along the way,
Right.
I was like, oh my gosh. So I started applying it to other things, and that's where And that's where that. So I took all of that, and I wanted to bless the people at the Paracount, because most people who go there are there because they're hungry and they're searching to fill the hole that's in there. And I
Yes.
wanted to be the voice of hope, not the voice of religion, but the voice of hope.
Right.
And
Right.
in this neck of the woods, people pay attention if you're wearing a collar. Now, if I'm walking around and I'm spouting all this stuff, I would sound like a religious, nut.
Right.
So, fortunately, uh, I was like, I'm just gonna wear the collar. And one
Yeah.
day when I did that, this man walked up to me in the booth, and I appreciated this man's brashness. He says to me, "Okay, Father, quick thing. One sentence. Don't preach at me. One sentence. Why you here?" Well, okay. And all of a sudden, bang. Because Jesus went around doing good and healing all who were oppressed of the devil, for God's power was with him.
Yeah.
He looked at me and goes, "Oh, okay." And that was it. I was like,
Kind of hard to argue with that.
that was the quickest, shortest little sermon I ever said in my life.
Yeah.
It was like,
Yeah.
okay, here we
Yeah.
go.
Awesome.
Anybody else? I'm like, yeah, anybody else? Yeah,
Anybody
so,
else? Anybody
yeah.
else? And in fact, we do have somebody else. We have
Oh,
some
excellent.
questions that have shown up in the thing, but I love that. That's a great. I love both those stories. Those great stories. I got to try the fishing one.
Absolutely. Hey,
I
you
have
call
actually.
me
I have.
when
It
you're
works.
fishing. Yeah, it does. Yeah,
Yeah,
anytime
I've
you're
done
fishing,
it.
you call me. I'll do it over the phone. No problem.
We've done it. We've done it up in Canada sometimes. It works. It works very well. It is a little bit cheating, but it's okay. We eat all the fish, so it's not.
That's right. That's right.
Well,
Yeah.
Jack was witness to that happening because with me with the banana with a smiley face on it, he was next to me when I found it. Remember?
Yeah, she got all
Exactly.
excited about this banana with a smiley face. I'm like, what is this
I was like,
about?
it's on
She
the
told me.
TV.
Then she told me, and I'm like, oh,
Just
okay. Yeah, that's
see, there's a difference between teaching religious tradition and teaching the spiritual principles behind it. When
correct.
you apply those things, you get 100%
That's it.
result.
That's it. So here's a question for you. I even put it up there. It says, question for Ed. What is a prophetic exorcist?
And that's Barry Martz. Is that his last name?
Barry
Yes.
Martz. Yep.
Oh, well, Barry, that is a fantastic question. None of your business. Okay. No, I'm just,
All right, Barry, I'm taking your question now. No.
no, Barry, that's a very good question. Well, I was trying to figure out what I could, in brief, describe what I do. One part, I do readings for people, and that's part of my counsel. And I counsel people, and I get the insight into their lives, so I can accurately give them, pinpoint the area, and whatever is revealed is what will be healed. So that's why that's that part of it. But then also there have been times when, as I'm speaking to these people, another voice starts coming out, and so I have to deal with that as well. So I've done exorcisms, and I'm very much involved in that, but at the same time I do the prophetic work. So I guess I just said, well, prophetic exorcist. And well, I could have called myself other things, spiritual counselor, but there's so many. But how many prophetic exorcists are out there? That's why.
I only know one. So, yeah.
Only one.
I only
That
know
movie.
one. I only
There
know
shall
one.
be only one.
We're talking to him right here. So
Yep. Yep.
here's we got a few questions. So this I think is actually this is a good one because I'm gonna let you read this, or I'm gonna read it out if it doesn't all show up. So Regina Bova says, I really love the way you love both the paranormal and the Bible. I used to feel guilty about my love of the paranormal. My question is that when you forced all three demons from the woman, did they stay away? In other
Very.
words, did it come
Wow.
back or
Regina Bova.
Bova?
Wow. Very good question. Very thoughtful question. And I can tell you, you, my friend, are very, very close to the kingdom. So keep that in mind. Very blessed. Okay. Well, here it is. Yes, they can come back. And what will happen is they're driven out. Perhaps, mankind was given authority or the keys of the earth. And so when Jesus did his work, mankind's, the image of God in his likeness was restored. That was a restorative work. Therefore, we have authority over unclean and evil spirits. So when I executed the authority and they left. Now, here's the thing: the woman, consider her a house. Now, her house is nice and clean, right? She's all good to go. She's finally receiving the healing that she needs. Such sweet, sweet relief. However, if she does not change the direction that she was in the first place, if she doesn't latch on to the greatest power that there is, God, and get God there in her, what
Yep.
will happen is this house will remain clean and empty. But the spirits that were removed into a dry place, a faraway place, they will find their way back, but this time they will come back with some friends, and they will be more powerful and more wicked than they were originally. And her condition will be worse than it was originally. That's why there have been some cases, which has broke my heart, where I've actually, Regina, had to say, no, I can't help you, because that person wasn't willing to change. If they were willing to change and embrace God and the love and the light, well, then when if they come back, all she would have to do is say stay away, and they would have to obey that because she's a child of light. But if she remains as she was, they will come back with reinforcements because they will not so easily be cast out the second time. Because remember, these beings are ancient and they're arrogant, and they really, really hate and resent human beings because of the fact we're made in the image and likeness of God who banished them. I
Correct.
hope that answers your question.
And we've got another one. That was a great answer to that question, and I totally agree with it too. Because we've had to give up on clients that we didn't want to, but they wouldn't. They wouldn't do anything to help themselves. They wouldn't follow the advice of go find your faith, find something positive, go back to
Exactly.
even your original church, whatever your original faith was, go back to that. You've got to change for the positive. Even go to counseling to get past these other things that you've been through that have muddied up your past and
Right.
yourself, and yeah, and they just never do it. They just keep wanting you to come back and fix it, and you can't.
Wave the magic wand, make it all better, and then
Yeah, but you can't
You'd be
keep it.
come back.
surprised how many people, when they see the caller, think that I'm the one that has all the answers, or
Yeah,
even being prophetic. How many times I get a phone call and they're like, hey, can you pray? Did God say this or that? And I'm like, no, you have to find out for yourself.
right,
Uh, I'm only here to help you. I'm not going to live or be healed for you. So,
right.
yeah.
That's exactly it. One is from Chelsea. Every time I go into the basement, I feel like I'm being watched. Could it be something bad? Just wondering. Um, my answer to that initially is if that's all that's going on, you go down, you feel like you're being watched. It could be high EMF that's in your house. High
Very
electrical
good. Yep.
Especially in your basement.
Yeah, that'll often. Yeah, that especially because usually in your basement is where your fuse boxes or your what you call box, electrical box and stuff is. A lot of wiring runs down below your basement, so if you end up with a lot of high EMF, it can make you feel like you're being watched. Um, Not necessarily anything evil or negative. I never jump. I never just jump to being something paranormal. As an investigator, my job is to try to determine what it could be that's more man-made or more natural rather than jumping anything paranormal. So if that's the only thing that's happening, Chelsea, I would say it's probably not even spirit related. But Ed, give me your opinion on that.
Okay. Well, it's my turn to say I completely agree with you, Jack. Yeah, the high. Well, there you go. There you go. I agree. No,
Yeah,
but it's true. It could be high EMF. Where is your house located? Is it near a bunch of telephone poles and the the wiring that way near the electrical juncture thing or whatever? It could be that. It could be just the way your house is situated. It could be even. It could even be um, spiritual energy that's down there that is like the feng shui kind of thing.
yeah,
Maybe there's the granite and the water's running, and underneath me you got an underground stream, and sometimes people can feel that.
yeah,
But in the end, it's simply this: when you go down to the basement and you feel nervous and you feel like something's watching you, immediately tell it you're the boss and to go. If it's just fear within you, then you've just conquered that fear because you just faced it and said no.
yeah,
Remember, you are the boss. You have free will. You are not a victim. If you start feeling like something's watching you, well, it's none of their business. If you thought somebody was staring at you, you would say something. Well, there you go. Say something and just say, you know what, from now on, this is my basement, and I'm not going to be afraid of anything, be it EMF or anything else, because in the end, your will is the thing that matters.
Right, right, right. And a lot of basements aren't the most homey of places. Not everybody has a finished basement. Some people like my basement. I store a lot of junk in my basement, so it's kind of disorganized, and which can kind of give you a feeling of I can't tell where
Talk
anything.
about a man cave, right?
It's a junk cave is more like it.
Yeah.
But my point is, there's a lot of clutter, things like that, and that can even cause those kind of feelings, like you can't see around everything. So is something watching you from someplace? It's just the way us human beings react to different environments. So I'm just going to throw this up here because this is nice from Ian to say. Great broadcast, Jack. And Carly. Yeah, you present really well. Well, thank you, Ian. We greatly appreciate that. We're glad you're enjoying the show tonight. Here is another question for you, Ed. Father Ed, have you ever been afraid while working a case?
That's Ella.
Sweet.
Hi, Ella.
Oh, that's Ella. Oh, it is Ella. Okay, all right. Sorry,
I
Ella.
hope you don't mind, Ella. I will actually talk about your case just a little bit. All right, Ella is one of my sheep, and actually, as was stated in the bio, she's a member of my congregation, and she had a, I guess you say, son-in-law that was definitely possessed. I mean, outright. And in this case, I was invited to come. I was a member of a team that was invited to come, and I was there. And he the man was very sweet, very nice guy, usually. But that day, when he knew that something was going to happen, the spirit was taking over. He had this horrible attitude, horrible, just all day.
Okay.
This is what the girlfriend was telling me. And then when I got to the house, he would run out of the house and stay out. He could not even go into the house.
Mhm.
And he would vomit, and so it was just clear. And so finally, when we through prayer. Now, yes, was I nervous then? You bet I was. And there were times where I'm like, wow, this is really big. When I know that this isn't a psychological issue, but this is an ancient being that's literally staring at me through that person's eyes, and it's got that sneer on its face, and it's trying to tell me that I'm like a little blip of light, and all that. Well, thank goodness for the divine authority, which shuts everything down. So, yeah, that case was one that really made me nervous. Absolutely, and did make me a little afraid. And to Ella's credit, she actually held on to the guy while the exorcism was going on. And Ella is like a half pint, but boy, she was a mighty woman holding on while that unclean evil spirit was being thrown out of him. And after that, now he's fine, and the whole family was actually transformed as a result of that, because it had roots in almost everyone, and all that got broken, and this amazing power. And so in short, yeah, there are times, but I will never show it, because when the client is terrified, they don't need to see the guy who's supposed to be the exorcist, chomping on. Yeah,
That's right. That's 100% true.
Okay, well, okay.
I don't know. I don't know why, but we've run into cases like that, and I've faced things. I'm not afraid of them. I don't know why. It's like I just don't feel anything towards them. I don't know why. I mean, I understand, and I have the respect of this thing could throw me across the freaking room if it wants to, and I am cautious about it. But I can't say I've ever been afraid. I don't know why. I mean, I don't know if I'm just not thinking of it in that terms.
Well, you know that it can't affect you because it can't touch the light. It can't do anything if you don't let it.
I don't know if I even think about that. It's just
it could be on a subconscious level.
Maybe I just don't feel any fear towards them. Maybe it's not. Maybe something else is putting some protection around me
that's probably it, because Yeah, that's
I
probably it.
feel like I guess when I look at them, I feel they just can't do anything.
There have been cases I was involved with where I forgot to take authority over the situation before I got there,
Yeah.
so it was permitted to manifest,
Mm.
and nothing, just
Yeah.
cold.
Yeah.
I feel love for the people, and I want to help the
Right.
people,
Right. Right.
but
Right. I
there
feel
wasn't
more fear for them than I feel for
right,
anything
but there
myself.
wasn't anything. But the people around me were afraid, and
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
had to deal with that
Yeah.
because fear is well, fear is like faith in reverse. So fear, oh, faith is basically the ability that a human being has to take what is invisible and manifest it into the visible.
Yeah.
So it's that doorway that opens up so that the that which is invisible can manifest, so that God can do whatever He needs to do.
Yeah.
And fear is the expectation of an evil thing.
Right.
So
Right.
or false evidence appearing real. You can put it like that. And so that's what fear does. It puts faith in an event that hasn't even happened yet, and they feed off of that, and so they actually use that. But when a person stops being afraid,
Yeah.
that's when the deliverance starts to happen.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it even goes back to when I had that experience at 17, and I was terrified. And then whatever came through and said, everything's going to be okay. You have things to do. That fear went away, and then that thing was driven out. Maybe from that time on, something's been around me. I don't know, but I've never really felt fear of anything like that, or of anything really paranormal. One other time, I mean, it was one time. That was this investigation. I was deathly afraid to go down the basement the next morning to pick stuff up. It was that feeling of like you go down there, something's going to happen. It
Hmm.
was kind of weird because there wasn't anything demonic there. It was just,
Right.
I think it was just the energy that was being presented by whatever spirit was down in there. Like, I don't want you down here. And that was the last time I ever remember being afraid of something. Was that time? And I had a friend, one of my other investigators, went down with me, and we picked up the stuff real quick and got the hell out of there. And that was the next morning. That wasn't
The,
even at night.
the first place I ever did was a simple house blessing, and there was a friend of mine that asked me if I could do that, and I said sure. He didn't tell me that the thing was haunted, so here I am. I'm blessing the place, and that was provoking. And I don't believe in provoking. I'm just
Right,
doing my job. As
right,
I'm blessing the place, everybody's in one room. I was a military police officer, so I know how to do an investigation. I know how to do an interview. So I did all that, and everybody was in one room. But there was another room where there was a coins in the candy dish flipping ding 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 by themselves. I promise you, sir, no one flung holy water faster than me that day. Done.
All right, I'm out of here. I'm done. I'm out of here.
But you do something once, and then everybody thinks that you do that as a
Yeah,
professional. Well, he did such a great job. Yeah, Father Ed, he'll take care of that, and that was really the beginning
yeah.
of where I am today. But I think Bob Burnell had a question. I wasn't sure.
There's one from Michelle Cook though. First, there is
Okay.
one from Bob, but Michelle has. I've been kind of holding off on it, but I'm going to post this up here. I probably have to read it all. She says, "I was told by a psychic in March that Saint Bernadette is on my left shoulder at all times, and that I am very connected and should be healing the world, but I am not living up to my potential. Could that be even remotely accurate? And how can I? Hang on, I'll read the rest of it." How can I change so that I am living up to my potential?
Wow.
It's a long question. It's a statement of something that happened.
Mhm.
First, regarding this psychic, I think we should maybe talk about that. Um, Telling her that Saint Bernadette is on her left shoulder at all times. She's very connected and should be healing the world. I don't even think I could heal the entire world, but you know.
Exactly.
Well, I
Well,
guess our first question is about that. What is the chances that's really even accurate?
all
Because that's
right.
the
Well,
first part of the question. What is the chance that reading was even really accurate?
not. Frankly, I'll be honest with you. I don't think so, and I'll tell you why. Because there are three things you got to look for when someone's giving you a reading. Does it educate you in where you are and where you're going? Does it encourage you to keep moving in the direction of God? And secondly, does it bring you comfort? So in King James or in King James English, edification, okay, education, encouragement, and comfort. Those are the three things you look for when you're getting some reading from somebody.
Right.
And life and more abundantly. But anything that comes and steal, kills, and destroys is dark. So when I look at this reading, I hear the Saint Bernadette is on her shoulder.
Right.
Okay. I'm not
Always.
even gonna I'm not gonna touch that because I'm not gonna fringe upon somebody's belief.
Right.
Okay? So
Okay.
we'll move on. However, she has the responsibility to heal the whole world and she's not doing it. That is taking away from encouraging. That's not encouraging her at all. And then on top of that, you are the way it sounded to me was you're a lazy bum and you're not living up to your, no offense to you,
I'm
Michelle.
glad you said that because I was
But
thinking it.
but that is Michelle. That's not you.
Michelle, we're not laughing at you. We're laughing at somebody telling you that. That's don't
Well,
get
Right.
Michelle,
laughing about.
if it's all right, Jack, I do actually have something for Michelle. Can I
Yeah,
share that?
go ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
All
This
right.
is
All right. So Michelle, as I was, reading that, I was filled with compassion. First of all, let me tell you something. The reason why you're watching this right now is because you were drawn to watch this, and that's because God's got his hand on you. You already know that you have a calling on your life. You already know this. The reason why I know this is because you're feeling like you're not living up to that standard. The standard is high because it is for you to keep looking at. Whatever you continue to look at, my wonderful human being, my beautiful sister, is what you will become. Okay? What you visualize is what you actualize. So if you're holding that image of never reaching it, you never will. But see, God has his hand upon you, and you have had situations where you have heard about God's love throughout your life, but you feel guilty. And if I'm wrong, just tell me. But I feel like there's guilt there and shame there. No, your guilt and shame has already been dealt with. God is not mad at you.
right.
And he is drawing you and he's calling you to himself because you do have a beautiful mission. And yes, it is healing. And I'm picking up on music. I'm not sure if you sing or if you're involved in music in some way, but that's a beautiful thing. So and write the spiritual experiences you get. So what I would do is I would take this reading, tear it up, and just go. You know what? This money that I spent on this psychic was towards my education.
There you go.
Instead, exactly. Instead, look at yourself in the mirror and go, I am a creation of God. I have a special call in my life,
Yeah.
and I will fulfill my purpose because God will direct me every day. You
Yeah.
put that in your mind and you keep that as a focus, that's where you go.
Yeah.
So I believe in you. I have not even met you, but I can see you. I can see you. And if you need to go to a priest and do a confession, do that. Get rid of that guilt and that shame because it doesn't belong to you anymore. And don't, for those voices, in your head for certain family members that said things about you, ignore that. Okay. Just put that aside, lay it down because who you really are is amazing. Who you really are was meant to bring healing to the world, not the entire world because nobody can do that, but to your portion of the world. Okay. God bless you. And I'm so glad I had a chance to talk to you. Thank you. Appreciate that,
Yeah.
Jack.
Oh no, no, no. I've been seeing Michelle's there. Michelle's, she's a friend of ours. She's watches the show every week, and I wanted to make sure I got to that because it was very important. I mean, I could tell by what she was raised very important. I would add this to it, just that with what you were saying. Sometimes people aren't sure what am I supposed to be doing. What is I even young kids. I tell them, well, what are you passionate about? What is your true passion? you know because usually something that you're passionate, I found out I'm passionate about the paranormal. I have a very true passion for it, and usually that tells you that's what
Exactly.
God wants you to do. Follow that passion that you have, something that you want to do, that you're always happy doing it. You don't care if you get rich off of it or anything, but you love to do it, and that's usually God's way of saying this is your gift and this is what you should follow doing.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes time to figure that out and find it. Um, but
That's well, just to say, I don't mean to interrupt you, but
no, it's
uh,
okay. I was pretty much done there. So
um, just to add another thing to Michelle, that's the nature of curses, okay? Human beings are made in the image and likeness of God. So what we say with conviction has power. So if I say to you, boy, that psychic was right, you really aren't living up to it, and I say these things and it produces the image within you, I've just cursed you. Because life and death is a proverb. Solomon said, life and death is in the power of the tongue, and they that speak it will eat the fruit of it. In the Hebrew, that word power is the word hand, yod, which life and death is in the hand of the tongue. So you can reach out and grab whatever you need by saying and agreeing with what's being said. And that's why you felt like you were less than afterwards. I'm sure she didn't mean to curse you, but she did. But now it's broken. And now you can live your life the way you know it's supposed to be. And
Right.
you will measure up.
Right. And I'll say this too: if you do want to discuss more of the spiritual and things with Ed, you have your own little groups that you have
Yes,
out
I do.
there. That you have your own little show, not show, but gathering, we'll call it. And why don't you mention that to people if you want to mention any of the ones that if people want to join you and learn more spirituality, go ahead and mention those.
Well, thank you,
I
Jack.
think it's a good
Every
time to bring that up.
every Thursday, every Thursday at 7 o'clock, I go Facebook Live, and it's for everyone. And I do a lesson from the scriptures, and I teach the spiritual principle behind the religious tradition, so that what was working for me, I am sharing with you. And so I have a nice group of people who do that, and you can even ask them. So please, that's that. Now, every Friday on Skype with my name, Ed Brodrick, I have a group of people where I teach the Bible study, and this is different. It's like a Bible interactive where we actually dig deep and we put into practice the certain spiritual principles. As a result of that, we've actually experienced power as if we were in the same room together. It was amazing. We had this one incident where oh, it was on Sunday. Every Sunday at 3 o'clock, we have prayer time at 3, and we actually had a cloud bursting experience, and that was awesome. And we had somebody hold the camera up to the sky where there was a cloud, and there was a demonstration of how the power of God works. And literally, that cloud was starting to shrink, and then when I called for it to shrink faster, it did, and it was amazing. Well, were you there for that, Carly, or did you miss
No,
that?
but I heard about it.
Yeah, so it was astounding. So great expectation, great manifestation. So I'll say it again. Ed Broderick on Skype. Every Thursday, I teach on Facebook Live, and you're more than welcome to come. And I will gladly talk to you about anything that you need.
Yeah. Yeah, and that might help also somebody like Michelle even just kind of find the direction maybe she should be going just by listening to that and listening to the scriptures you guys talk about and participating in that. Sometimes that alone can suddenly something can be said or a prayer can be done and all of a sudden something clicks and it's like that's what I think I should be doing is something something you weren't even thinking of, but it'll just come to you because through prayer God can provide you that answer just out of the blue. Kind of like what happened to Ed. Kind of like what
Exactly.
happened to me. Happened to
Exactly.
all of us that way, to be honest with you. All right, let's going to go on to Bob Burnell because I know you saw his thing. I want to get it up here. Father Ed, I'm a paranormal investigator and approach everything from a scientific way of thinking. My question: how far down the rabbit hole does all this go? Vampires, werewolves, demons, etc. For uh, for adults, it is hard to be open after so long of let me read this suppressing what is real and what is not. And there's a lot of what is real and what is not. And some of the things like vampires, werewolves, stuff like that comes from different groups in society and history. Right? They may not be truly what they're talking about, but they may be a reference to something else. All right. But Ed, go ahead and
Well, that's okay. Great question, Bob. First,
I'll leave it up there for a second.
that I can tell you, and so can Jack and definitely Carly. The rabbit hole goes pretty far, and that's and it really does.
I haven't found the bottom yet. I'll tell you
And,
that.
and believe me, I've been running that rabbit hole myself. So, like werewolves, for instance, they've been sighting of like dog men. Huge sightings of that, right? And then there is I don't know about actual like undead vampires, no, but Um, but there's a lot. The skinwalkers, well, because let me tell you, Moses, when he threw his staff down, the sorcerers, the Egyptian sorcerers, threw their staff down, and they turned into snakes. But Moses' staff turned into a snake and ate the others. Now, I know for a fact that those were not sleight of hand magicians, but they were occultists that had learned the principles of the spiritual and were manipulating them. So, how far does this go? My friend, it goes as far as the human will permit it, truly. Because just because I use these spiritual principles for the way they were intended, by the way God had created it to be, in the way that was demonstrated by Jesus, it doesn't mean that those who are not of the light cannot also apply those principles also. So that's why a lot of black magic works. And because there are spiritual laws that are being used. And then you got the idea of like topas, or what's a topa? But a topa is a supposed manifested being that came out of the collective unconsciousness of the will of a human being. You know, like Slender Man, right? Slender
Right.
Man was invented, but yet now people are having sightings of Slender Man. Well, that's because and this is my personal opinion, I believe that these beings who've been around when they were cast out of heaven, there was an innumerable amount. So now we have these nightmare thoughts, right? And it's part of our unconsciousness. I believe they will assume that shape and then become the very thing that we're afraid of. So, yeah, are there werewolves? Well, you go out in the woods and all of a sudden you see this creature walking by you. That could be an apparition looking real. So, in the end, my friend, you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised with it. I was, and I'm open. When I was a kid, I saw a triangle UFO fly over the trees. Okay, so I believe that's a government thing, but I'm open, and I've seen things, and I've experienced things, and I know people who have seen things and experienced things, Bigfoot and all that. Absolutely, and why not? But in the end, it's not really about how far down the rabbit hole it is. The question is, where are you in this whole thing? And
Yeah.
where do you stand in your relationship with your creator? And in the end, when you got that, you don't have to worry about how far the rabbit hole goes. You're it. You're done. You're good.
Yeah. You can follow that rabbit hole as deep as you want too,
Yeah,
or not. You can climb back out of it too if you really want to.
exactly.
It just depends on what your interests are and what you're doing. I mean, talk about people manifesting things. I didn't find this out until about 2 years ago now, when my son and I were sitting, or maybe it was a little bit longer than that. Remember the new version of It came out?
Mm-hmm.
The clown, that's really a spider or whatever it is. And we were watching that preview, and my son, who was in college at the time, goes, he goes, uh, the kids around here keep saying, back in high school, still talk about they see a clown wandering in the woods around the park and stuff like that. And there's ones that claim they see him, and how he had really been an old bum and dressed up as a clown. He killed kids in the woods and stuff like that. And I said, what? Wait a minute. I said, where did you hear this from? He goes, well, I think it started in school. Some kids started it or something like that. I'm like, no, they didn't. I said, do you know where that story started? He looks at me. No. I said, you were there when it happened. He's like, what? I said, do you remember Halloween when you were around 12, 13 years old? And was taking you and some of your friends around, and we went down by the park, and I stopped by the woods and was staring down into the woods, and there's this old shack down there where the kids actually built this old little shack the older kids to go drinking and stuff like that, right? And I stood there down, and you guys are looking. They're like 12, 13, 10. I said, I started telling you the story about the old bum who lived in that shack, and that on Halloween, he'd dress up as a clown and lure kids down into the shack to kill them. And I made this whole story, right? And at the end of it, my two boys are looking at me like dumbfounded, like, "Oh, come on, Dad, this is bullshit." Their two friends are looking at me like, "Oh my God, this really happened?" And I
Yep.
finally go, it's all made up. I just made that up. I said, it's not a real story. Their one friend kept saying, no, it is real. I know. I heard my parents, I think, talking about it, and blah, 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 blah. I was like, no, I just made this up just now. I couldn't convince the kid that I had really made it up. So, anyways, we bring him home and stuff like that. Well, I guess he went around the school the next day telling everybody this story. And for all these years, it carried on to the point where people were seeing this guy in the woods, even though in my story, I had him killed by the police. It was a Halloween story. But to this day, kids, the high school kids, and even today, the younger kids and stuff still say they see this clown, this guy dressed in a clown suit, old bum dressed in a clown suit, in the woods trying to capture kids. I made it up. But you're right, people can manifest it. And
because
make it
right. There's a spiritual principle, the spiritual law. They call it law of attraction,
Yeah.
the law of reciprocity. Call it what you will.
Yeah.
But because human beings were made in the image and likeness of God, it is them that determine what's happening, even unconsciously.
Yeah.
And the evil spirits, the demons, call them what you will, they're more like parasites. They can't, in and of themselves, display any power. They have to have access to a human being in order for that supernatural manifestation to happen. That's why they start with the scratches on the wall or the little knocks.
Right.
That way you go, oh, is there a ghost here? Like one client I had, he was a middle-aged man, and he's like, oh, okay, there might be a ghost in my house. So he put on the speak. He's like, hey, are you here? And just by doing that, he invited it in. And then, you know what, hit the fan as a result.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they parasite off the human will. And there's not and then gradually, not all of a sudden, but gradually, then it's oppression, and then it's obsession, and then possession. So, it's weird nature.
I just wanted to post up that little thing from Michelle Cook. Awesome answer. She says, "Thank you so much. I've been feeling like I was less than since she said that to me. Thank you." So you made a difference there, Ed, for Michelle. And Michelle, we're always here to help you. We're always here to talk. And you'll find your right path, and you'll know what's the right thing. Let me see. What else we got?
I have a question from Steve White.
All right. Somebody said Bob had a question. We covered Bob's question, though, right?
That's right. Oh, and Bob, by the way, Bob, just a quick thing. I know that you've been having experiences of coincidences sometimes, meaningful ones, where you'll think of a thing and then you'll see it on TV or on the radio. That's because you're bumping into a spiritual principle. Now, if you actually did that with intention, watch what happens. Then you'll really take a nice trip down the rabbit hole. Just a little thought for you, sir. All right, go ahead.
I'm going to post this real quick. I forgot about this. This is from my sister, who's watching us downstairs. Maybe it's the ghost of Bobby Cirilli, who was killed, shot in the park in 19... I forgot about that. There was a kid we knew, Bobby Cirilli, who was killed down in that park, where I made the story up about. It was, I think, drug-related or something at the time, but could his spirit be manifesting in a different way because of a story I told? I don't know. That's interesting, though. I just wanted to throw that up there. I had forgotten about that because he probably is a lost soul that's maybe still wandering down there somewhere. And he was shot and left there. The newspaper boy found him the next morning.
Wow.
Yeah. And the funny thing was, it was right next to a house. It was on a pathway, a little bike path between the park and a house. He was shot right next to the house, but nobody in the house did anything.
Wow.
They claimed the next day they didn't hear anything. It was right next to their house. How could you not hear? We heard the gunshots at night. We didn't know what was going on.
Right.
Somebody, but we weren't sure what they were. Yeah, they sound like backfires of gunshot. We're about almost 1,000 yards away, but from where my house is, where that was. But nobody around there called. He wasn't found until the next morning. Anyways, Steve White. So here's Steve's question. While attending church, I read both Bibles, the New and the Old Testament. I was like, wow, nobody could just make these spiritual stories up. I must say some of it sounded pretty spooky.
There's one up above, too.
Oh, there's one up above. Okay, let me see. Where is it, Carly?
It's literally right above it. Do you want me to read it?
Yeah, go ahead and just read it.
I have to share this with you. Many, many years ago, I wasn't God's best friend, and he wasn't mine. Years went by, and later on, I had a spiritual experience found myself going to church 3 times a week. Before that, I blamed God for everything. And then I'll read, while attending church, I read both Bibles, the New and the Old Testament. I was like, wow, nobody could just make these spiritual stories up. I must say some of it sounded pretty spooky.
Yeah. So there's the first part. If I did find the first part, I just posted it up there. It's a very,
Well, it isn't really a question, but
no, but it's an
yeah.
interesting observation, I guess.
Yes.
No, and you can't make these things up. I suppose a really good story writer could, but I don't believe they were stories. There's people who believe they were just stories made up. I don't believe that. They're too specific. There's too much detail within the Bibles.
But you know, there was that story that was about this guy who was an arrogant captain, and he sailed up up north, and this was a story. This was a fictional story, and the captain on this big ship that he was very confident about, and he hit an iceberg and he sank, and the ship's name was the Titan. Now, years later, was the whole thing with the Titanic. You know, you got that, and then you've got this. I forgot there was another story about this 3 men that were shipwrecked. It was two men and a boy, and this was a story by Edgar Allan Poe, and they ate the boy. You know.
Oh,
and
yeah. Yeah.
Then years later, it actually happened. It was an incident that happened, and they actually ate the boy. So, and then Jules Verne, when he was talking about the Nautilus, and the Nautilus turned out to be an atomic submarine, or Star Trek with their flip phones and the sliding doors, and then it happened. I believe that with these, people are watching this, and and it's triggering something, and even that's the story of the Tower of Babel, same thing. Everybody came together, had one mind, one intention, and they wanted to build something that would make themselves up to God, and they had to be, because they were not in the place, the technology far surpassed their spiritual maturity, so they had to be broken down. So, but now, we're in a new stage of mankind where once again we're starting to come together, and so there will be more supernatural manifestations because people are coming together in agreement and intention, and so it always opens things up to the spiritual realm.
Right. Yeah, it's a good point. That is a good point.
That happened to me the other day when I was playing a video game. I was playing, and I was talking to Father Ed about it. I was playing a Tom Clancy game called The Division. I had to stop it because it freaked me out so bad, because literally it was the status of New York City right now with the coronavirus. And the only difference was that New York City isn't under martial law, and the apocalypse hasn't happened. But all the news reports, if you walk around and listen to the news, to the radios, it was exact. I freaked out. I couldn't play it after that because it was too real.
That when we did that experiment, you did, and then when I did that experiment with some other families, where I had you intentionally visualize something that you wanted to see or an experience you wanted to have, with the intention of it happening, and have the emotion of it already being done. And of course, that's scriptural. I was just teaching you a deeper meaning of that. And what happened? You had it come to pass, and there was a family that did the same thing. Everything came to pass. They were blown away, and that's what I'm saying. And so that ties directly into the paranormal, because I believe a lot of what we intention and what we are expecting will manifest. I think we do leave the door open for manifestations and stuff, when we go to these different places, and they want to have an encounter. Well, guess what, dude? If you leave yourself open, someone's going to kick you down the rabbit hole. So,
yeah. You may keep going too.
Yeah, exactly.
I just got to post this for my sister just real quick, then we get back to that, because I didn't know this. So Michelle, she's my older sister, she's older than me. Okay. She's laughing about the story that I told about the old bum was around since we were kids, like her age. They were kids drinking in the woods. I didn't know that.
Drinking in the woods.
Well, yeah. Hey, that was probably the same shack. She probably helped build it. I don't know. It's a pretty old shack down there. But the funny thing is, I didn't know that. I didn't, because I was not one of. Shelly would tell you, I never went drinking. I was not a kid. I never drank. I never went out. I never said boo to anybody. I was not the kind of person you see me now, which is very outgoing. I was an introvert, man. I didn't. So I didn't know about any of those stories. It's interesting. I made up the same story that they knew about years and years ago, or they talked about years and years ago. Go figure that. I never heard it. I know I never heard it because I never hung out with those groups. So, but interesting enough, people still see it and manifest it, and it's picking up new life ever since I retold it. So I guess I retold it and didn't know it. So
That's funny.
it's just funny. It's just funny. Um, I see. Oh, we don't have any other questions right now. Ed, is there anything else you want to cover? We're actually over. Well, our normal hour show seems to be turning into an hour and a half show. We were at 9:30. Is there anything else you'd like to cover? Any websites you'd like to tell people about? Your Facebook page? Anything else you'd like to discuss? And then we're gonna call it quits for the night here.
All right. No. I'm just again every Thursday at 7 o'clock. I do Facebook Live and I do a teaching, and you can ask questions like here. So that way, as I'm teaching, I'll just see your questions and I'll answer them as I go along. I love to answer questions. I don't care what kind of question it is, and if I can help you, especially in the area of you've been deliverance or something, or if you need to seek me out and I could pray and bless you, and perhaps even if you need me to take a look and see what's going on, I'll gladly do that. Whatever way I may be of service to you. So take that. So Thursday, 7 o'clock. Friday, 7 o'clock on Skype, and it is growing. It's a growing group, and we love it because everybody there has had issues with the paranormal, and we get along with each other quite well. And we are learning that we don't have to be in the same place to experience unity with each other and the power that manifests of it. So that's amazing. And so that's a one-on-one teaching and questions, and we're just pulling some awesome dynamics out of the scriptures. And then on Sunday, we actually take those principles and apply them in prayer. And again, we've seen healings. We've even seen somebody be delivered as a result of that long distance. But really, is there a distance in the spiritual world? I think not.
Not really.
Nope.
Not really.
Oh, yeah, one more thing. Oh, my gosh. I
Hey,
love you, Jack. I blessed the day I met you. We've always had some great conversations. And again, I humbly appreciate you having me on. That was a great honor. Carly, I love you. And I'm honored that you are, one of my peeps. And
she is. Yeah, you get to see more of Carly if you go to Ed's other things too. If you go to his other groups on Facebook, Carly is there as well, so you get to see more of her.
Absolutely. Okay, good. So yeah, I'm done. I'm good.
All right. Okay, Ed. Well, thank you for joining us tonight, and you take care, and we'll have you back on again, I'm sure.
Well, it's been my privilege.
All right. It's always a pleasure, my friend. You take care now.
I'll see you on Friday.
Yep, you will. Bye.
Bye. All right, Carly. So this is it for us too for the night. We appreciate everybody coming in. Cindy Leach, thank you very much for saying it's very informative. Nick Mall, Gedge hung in there. Everybody else for watching. We always greatly appreciate you. Please come back again. If you need any good reading material, you can find my books on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com. Just put in the search and put in my name in the search thing. Just put in Jack Kenna, and you will find all my books on both of those sites, Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com. So have a great one, everybody. Hope you had a great weekend. I know we did. And we'll see you next Tuesday. Good night, everybody.
Bye.